Alright, this is part 2 of our editing tutorial in Adobe Premiere. In part 1, we opened Premiere up, talked about the opening screens, imported a few clips in, and talked about what the layout of our editing suite looks like. In part 2, we're going to edit some of these clips in our timeline. We're going to add some titles and music and just do some basic editing. Now, hopefully you have an idea of what you want for your project. For this tutorial, I just have some random clips. I'm going to do sort of an opening sequence to show different ways to edit. Now, an important thing to note, timelines are made up of sequences. So you can see that Adobe has created a sequence here called GoPro 147, which is just the name of the clip that I dragged in. And my sequence settings are the same settings as this clip. So that's just an important thing to note. If you have different clips with maybe different dimensions or different frames per second, you usually want to start out putting in a clip that matches the majority of your clips, if not all of your clips. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a basic opening sequence. In this case, I know what music I want, so I'm going to import Control-I and import in my MP3 clip. And so with MP3, with music files, it's the same as a video clip. You can double click on this and see the waveform for this clip. You can scrub through, and if you only want part of a clip, you'd hit I, O to end it, and then you would just click that audio icon and drag it down to wherever you want in your timeline. The top ones are your video, the bottom ones are your audio. In this case, I want the whole clip. So I'm going to stretch those out and add the whole clip here. Now, I like to expand my music bar a little bit so it's easier to see where the music changes and shifts as I'm editing. Now, another big thing we want to create, especially since these are opening titles, is a basic title. There's a ton of stock titles that Adobe gives, but I'm just going to show how to create a very basic one. So I'm going to bring my cursor to where I want the title to start, in this case at the very beginning, and I'm going to hit Control T, and that's going to create a title layer or a text layer. And so then if I double click this, I'm now in typing mode and I can type whatever I want. So now I'm still in typing mode. So if I click out of here, it's going to create new text boxes. And I don't want that. I just want this one and I want to move it to the center. So one way to do that is to come down here to the selection tool and to bring that into the middle. If we want to change the font or change the alignment, we can click up here on Window and come down to Essential Graphics. And that'll bring up our graphics settings here. So this is just for editing our text layer. So in this case, I'm just going to show how I would change the font. I can double click on the title here to highlight everything, and then I'm going to come down here to text. I'm just going to create a very basic one, and then I want to center it, and I want it to be perfectly centered in the frame. So I'm going to come up here to line, and then that will center it horizontally, and then if I want to center it vertically, I can do that. So now we have just a basic title with a slightly nice font. I can change the color, and you can do all sorts of fun things with titles that I'm not going to go into. Another key shortcut that I find very useful, especially for titles, is fading in and fading out. There's if you hit Control D after clicking on a clip, then you'll see these little crossbars. This just means that the clip is fading in, and then at the end that it's fading out to whatever is above it. In this case, nothing's above it, so it's fading out to black. So let's say if I move this clip underneath it, then you'll see, and I also want this clip to fade in, so I'm going to click on it and click Control D, and so now. Okay, I'm going, so hide for a sec. Alright, so I don't want all of that, and obviously I don't want that audio, the clip audio, so in this case I'm just going to I'm going to expand this out, and you can see this bar here where my cursor shows the arrows. That's to change the volume. I'm just going to bring that down to 0. Now it's really shaky there at the beginning, so I really just want to start this clip. I should have done this when it was in my source monitor, but I want to actually cut it there. Now there's a few ways you can cut clips down or trim them. One is by sort of hovering over the edge of the clip where you get the red icon there, and you can click and drag, and that will shorten the clip down to wherever you want. The other way is to hit C for cut. That will change your cursor to the razor tool. And then you can click wherever on the clip and it will cut it for you. Now we're still in razor mode, so we need to switch back to our selection tool. So we're going to do that by hitting V. So C and V are used together a lot, at least for me. So I'm going to hit V and then select the beginning of this clip that I don't want and just delete it. And then I can drag this on the timeline, and I'm going to hit Control D again to fade that in. And then maybe fade it out even sooner. And then from there, I'm just going to copy this text by hitting Control C and then Control V, and that will, we're going to change this to something, I don't even know what. And then again, I click the selection tool, or I could hit V, and then I'm going to center that horizontally and center that vertically. And then I'm just going to hit play. Now I don't like that fade out, so I'm going to click down here on that fade out for the end of the clip. I'm going to delete that. So now there won't be a fade, but there is still a fade in for the title. Now let's say these clips are kind of small and I want to stretch them out so that I can see them better. You can do that a couple ways. One is by dragging this bar in and out, and that'll bring it. The way I like to do it is by the plus key or minus key to bring them in and out. I'm going to shrink this down so we also have more room now that we're working in our timeline. So that's pretty much the basic editing style that I go through. Now there's a ton more obviously that you can do with Premiere, but as far as cutting clips down and adding titles, which is really a big thing, I hope this covers a lot of that. Now if you want the title to overlay on the video, the nice thing with this text track or text layer is you can just drag that wherever you want, and since it's on top of the clip underneath, then it's sort of stacked. You can think of it as if the whatever this order is how they're stacked. For example, if I brought this on top, now you won't see the title because our clip is on top of it. So the order does matter where you add it in here. I'm just going to go through and add a few more clips and just kind of mess around with the editing. This is all just kind of on the fly. Scrub to where I want to start, click I. I just want the, actually I'll bring both in, so I click on the actual clip. And then I'm going to bring the volume down here. Then I'm going to fade it in again with Control D. Okay, so now I'm going to click Control C and then Control V. Copy this title over. Let's make this interesting. 300 years ago. And then I'm going to center. So again, I click on the cursor, center, vertical center, and then I feel that there's a beat here. So I want to line up my playback cursor to this downbeat in the music, which I can see is right here in the waveform. And I know that that's where I want my next clip to end, but I don't want my next clip to be too short. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit, make that title shorter. So I want where the subject's running. I'm going to bring it here and click I. It's really shaky. And then I'm going to bring in both the audio and the video. And then I remember here that this is where that beat and the downbeat comes in, so I'm going to cut to there and bring in my next title. Need another title. There lived a strange wanderer. So then again, click cursor, center that. So then it's kind of on the beat, the downbeat there. This feels very rushed, so I'm going to spread this out. So I'm going to hover click, and I'm going to click and drag this box over all my clips that selects them all. Then I'm just kind of going to spread them out a bit so it doesn't feel as rushed. Okay, so I've just kind of moved the clips around a little bit. I'm not going to mess around with this too much more. My main goal is to just give an idea of what editing looks like, and hopefully this gives some tips for different things. I haven't gone into a lot of what these buttons do. You can play around with that, but again, the main ones are the selection tool, the razor tool, and I would suggest those for beginner editors. Another thing that's really important to note that I run into a lot is this snap-in timeline. So if this button's not highlighted blue, then when you drag these clips, you'll see that nothing's sort of snapping. It's just a very smooth flow. You don't want it to predict where you're trying to drag it to. You know where you want to drag it to. But I mainly do my editing with this turned on. So you can click that button and that will just snap it to, it kind of predicts where it thinks you want your clip to be. So in this case, it's assuming that I want it at the beginning of this clip. So it just snaps it there. It doesn't give me quite as smooth of a drag on that. So say I want to bring the beginning of this title to the beginning of this clip, I just drag it over and you can see the little gray icon. That means that it's perfectly aligned. So again, I hope this is helpful and not too long. My goal was to just give some beginner tips. I'm new to doing tutorials like this, so I'd love any constructive feedback you might have, and thanks for watching.